From Pocketnow.com, this is Pocketnow Weekly.
Hello, and welcome to episode 019 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from Pocketnow.com where we discuss what's hot and what's cool in the world of mobile technology, Windows Phone, Android, and iPhone, and everything in between. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, senior editor at Pocketnow, and today I'm joined, as usual, by our managing editor, Anton D. Nagy. Good morning to you, sir.
Good day to you guys and to everybody.
And by our editor-in-chief, Brandon Miniman. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
We have we've had a short week. We have a short week here in the United States because of the Thanksgiving holiday, which will arrive as usual tomorrow. And we also had a late podcast last week. So this is a podcast that is not covering as many topics as usual. But as long-term listeners know, that does not mean we won't churn out a 14-hour podcast. Somehow we'll find a way. We do have some great stuff to talk about, though. Some of it we touched on last week, but we didn't know enough yet about what we were going to talk about. And I want to get things kicked right off talking about one of the most buzzed about devices of the season, and it's one that I don't have. Brandon Miniman has the Nexus 4 and has been making some videos about it, and we all want to hear your thoughts. Brandon.
Well, happy to provide them because they're a lot different than I thought they were going to be. And let me frame this properly. The Galaxy Nexus was one of the best Android phones ever, and I think everyone was expecting it to be. It was Google's new Nexus flagship. It had the second 720p screen of all time. Of course, the HTC Razan was the first, so it was kind of a breakthrough. It had this beautiful screen. It was super AMOLED. It was fast. At the time, it came with, I think it was Ice Cream Sandwich. It was the first phone with Ice Cream Sandwich. Is that right, guys?
I think that is correct, yes.
And, it was such a good phone. It had a good in-hand feel. It had good weighting. It came out on carriers. It had LTE. It was affordably priced, although actually it started, I think, a little bit higher at like $499, a little bit lower than your average unlocked phone at the time, but still no Nexus 4. So when Google announced the Nexus 4, I was like, hot damn, this is going to be the next Galaxy Nexus. This is going to be an awesome, awesome phone. It's got the S4 Pro quad-core. That thing smokes. It's got the even higher resolution display. It's like an Optimus G, which is awesome, but it's running stock Android. So that must mean it's going to be faster, and it's going to be unadulterated Android, which is just awesome because Google has done such a good job at making Android good enough without a skin to be just beautiful and elegant and fast and fluid and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I got the Nexus 4, and I've been using it since, I don't know when, I think I received it on Monday. And so it's been a solid, 48 hours, a little bit more, which is a long time because, when you first get a device, of course, you spend almost every waking moment with it. Yeah. And as a result, you're like, why is my battery life so bad? And then you're like, oh, yeah, because I'm using it constantly.
I'm using it all the time, yes.
Yeah. And I am tremendously disappointed with the Nexus 4, and there's several reasons, but I want to first start off with something funny that happens. Sometimes you see a scary movie where like someone goes into a room after having just left it and something's different, like the couch is on another side of the room, kind of like what's that movie with the cameras in the house?
Safe House, not Safe House, something. I don't know. I don't watch horror movies.
Like Paranormal Activity.
Oh,
there's a lot of movies with cameras in the house. I was about to say something else, but that's another type of movie.
Yes, Tony.
Anyway.
But anyway, so I'm having that experience with the Nexus 4. I leave the room and I come back, and the Nexus 4 is on the floor, and that kind of rhymes.
Oh wait, what? Oh, because it's sliding off surfaces.
Yes, it is so weird. Yeah. It is, literally, I've tried this on 3 or 4 tables, and I'll place it in the center of the table, like a foot away from the ledge, and I'll come back, and I'm like, how did that, why is
yes.
it?
I've talked about this. And you can put it down and you can actually watch it crawl across stuff, right? Because this is what happened with the Optimus G. I couldn't keep hold of the thing. Like I also would like look up for a second, I'd look down, and it's just gradually just slipping along the tabletop if it's anything but perfectly level. I know exactly what you mean.
I'm so glad that you're saying that because I thought I was crazy.
No.
Brendan, when I wrote this piece about here's why Google is selling a Nexus 4 bumper, somebody in the comments said that there is by design a gasket or something on the bottom of the phone designed specifically to avoid slipping. Did you see something like that, or that's just marketing talk?
No, I'm looking at it now. It's flush. It doesn't protrude beyond the piece of glass on the back, so it doesn't keep it from sliding.
Wow. So it's exactly the same as the Optimus G. Yeah. Does it slide out of your pocket, Brandon? Let me ask you. Does it, like, when you're sitting down and, you know, you're like, if you're sitting in a cab or something like that and your legs get that up angle, you know, does it slide out of your pocket? Because that happened all the time when I had an all-glass phone.
No, it doesn't slide out of my pocket. I haven't noticed that. That would be ultra weird.
Well, watch out.
I think I think this slipperiness is we're seeing Gorilla Glass 2 roll out, and I'm thinking that Gorilla Glass 2 is smoother.
It could well be. You know, it's funny because I've noticed that going from device to device, I've had a lot of devices recently, and between the 810 and the Droid DNA, there's a very different thumb feel under the thumb, and the fingerprint patterns are different on it. You can tell it's the material. I don't know if they're both Gorilla Glass 2 or what. I mean, these are just the two examples I picked, but yes, I know what you mean. I mean, it's interesting to see how different glass works, and if you think that this Gorilla Glass 2 is contributing to the additional slipperiness, I wouldn't be prepared to disagree with you.
Interesting. Yeah, so I'm going to go through a list of things that I'm disappointed with, and we're talking about this. Yes, I've got a list here, and
this is great because this transitions into the first topic of the Android segment, which is what we love and hate about the Nexus 4. So please, just hit us with this.
Well, this is going to be that, but more extensive.
Yeah.
The iPhone 5 has this new screen technology where they bond the touch layer, the touch sensitive layer, to the glass. I might not be describing that right, but basically it allows the screen mechanism, as it were, to be thinner so that the device can be thinner.
Mm-hmm.
Is this where they eliminate that layer between the glass and the display itself?
I was going to ask that. Is this this doesn't differ from that lamination that everyone does their own kind of way?
It should be the same.
Right. So then the benefit to that is that it of course makes the device thinner, and it also brings the screen up about 1 millimeter, which it makes the screen look closer to the surface, which is nice. The big downside is that it impacts negatively touch sensitivity, and we've seen this. People are starting to complain about it on the iPhone 5. I noticed it from day one on the iPhone 5. The typing on the keyboard felt different. It didn't feel as accurate, and the Optimus G and the Nexus 4 has. I'm assuming that the Optimus G has this problem. I didn't spend enough time with an Optimus G, but the Nexus 4 has this problem, and the screen and the touch sensitivity is kind of numb on the Nexus 4, and it really impacts the usability of the phone. And I don't think it's something that can be fixed with software. I think it's a hardware thing. It's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely something to get used to. Did you notice any numbness on the Optimus G, Michael?
No, I was just thinking back to my time with the G, and I didn't. Not that I'm aware of, not that I'm recalling. I think I was just too blown away by how smoothly how close the software got to a one-to-one experience under my finger. So I may not have noticed any hardware deficiencies contributing to that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a touch sensitivity of the screen, which again isn't a deal breaker, but it's a little bit frustrating. The next thing that disappoints me about the Nexus 4 is the in-hand feel, and I've been trying for the last 2 days to put my finger on it because I pick it up in my hand and I wrap my fingers around it and I feel it, and I don't feel like that satisfaction, that sense of like, yeah, this is great. This is a
sensorial reward.
You know the feeling you get with like an HTC phone or a Galaxy Note. You're like, oh, damn it, I love this.
Yes.
I don't get that with the Nexus 4, and I think I finally figured out why. The build quality actually is cheap. While it looks on the surface to be a high-end phone, you get this awesome pattern on the back and there's glass on the front that wraps around the edges and there's nice little details. When you hold it in your hand, it feels, dare I say, like an LG phone. And we almost got past this LG thing because the Optimus G is a big step up from LG. It really is. But the Nexus 4 for some reason feels like a little bit of a step back.
Oh, is it because of why is that? I mean, is it because of the change in design from a blocky thing to an organic thing? Is it because it's aping the Galaxy Nexus? What is...
Yes, I keep focusing on the edge, which is soft touch plastic, and maybe it's the difference in texture from the smoothness of the front, smoothness of the back, and then the soft touch, and so it just feels like it's lined with plastic. I can't really describe it. And I need some more time with the phone to figure it out. But anyway, so that's the next thing. The next thing on my list is the Chrome browser. The Chrome browser in Android has worse performance in almost every case than the stock Android browser. And Google keeps sticking this on the Nexus 7. They stick it on the Nexus 4, on the Nexus 10, and it's like, come on, guys, this browser's not finished yet. It feels beta. It's got great tab management. Bookmark sync is awesome, and password sync is awesome, but it's not as fast as the default Android browser. Have you guys found that to be the case?
Yes, I have, since I started using Chrome, found it to be the laggier browser for months and months. But I was just talking about this yesterday with a friend of mine. I deal with the lagginess, and I don't complain about it often because I like that Chrome syncs across my desktop and my mobile platforms, and it kind of remembers my history across devices. Yeah, I mean, so for me, yes, it's laggy, but I get around it with other conveniences. What about you, Tony? Do you use Chrome?
I do not use Chrome because I don't have a device, I don't have a Nexus phone. So,
you don't use it on iOS?
No, I'm using Safari and I'm happy with it.
Okay.
And as to illustrate this point further, right now uploading is a Galaxy Nexus versus Nexus 4 comparison video, where we're comparing the Nexus 4 with Chrome, with the Galaxy Nexus with stock Android. And you'd think that the Nexus 4 would smoke the Galaxy Nexus because the S4 Pro is a beast. But guess what? It's about the same speed. In fact, sometimes the Galaxy Nexus is faster, sometimes the Nexus 4 is faster. And I bet you, if you were to take the stock Android browser and stick it on the Nexus 4 and then do the same comparison, the Nexus 4 would smoke the Galaxy Nexus, as it should. But it's not. It's about the same, and it shouldn't be.
Interesting. And I mean, is this just browsing, or is this general responsiveness? Are we still talking about Chrome versus browser?
It's just browsing.
Okay.
Overall, the Nexus 4 is definitely faster than the Galaxy Nexus by about a second to a half a second. It's not a mega leap, but it is noticeably faster. And then the next thing, really the last thing on my list, is this issue of LTE, and I know people kind of groan about that. The thing about LTE is that if you're coming from a device that had LTE, the Nexus 4 is going to feel slow. But if you're coming from a device with HSPA plus already, the Nexus you're not gonna. It's like it's all about comparison, right?
Yeah. It's all about you're going to see like differences if you have devices right next to each other. You're not going to necessarily see it left to right. But I don't know. I mean, the LTE question is completely uninteresting to half of our listeners, and it's critical to the other half. Like, it's the most polarizing thing this side of Android versus iOS, I feel like.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'd be interested in? I know it's the same platform, the same phones, the Optimus G and the Nexus 4. I'd be interested in seeing a side-by-side comparison on how LG's version of the Nexus 4, if I may, works, and how Google's version of the Optimus G works. Comparing just them side-by-side, stock Android versus LG customization. Hardware is approximately the same, 99%. Interesting.
That would be interesting, and we should think about arranging that. That would be cool to see.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing the video that you're uploading now, the Galaxy Nexus versus the Nexus 4, because that's really what's the most interesting comparison, right? It's like, this is the previous iteration of the Nexus flagship. Here's the current one, and they even look alike. I mean,
they do.
Since the Nexus S, yes.
Yeah. Oh, but the Galaxy Nexus, the Galaxy Nexus changed more from the Nexus S than I feel like the Nexus 4 changes from the Galaxy Nexus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
All this talk actually makes me miss my Galaxy Nexus a little bit. And that's why Brandon, I feel you as far as your objections to the design, because when the Nexus 4 was announced after all the leaks, and it actually was the thing we'd seen leaked, I was like, really? Because it to me, this is just a aesthetics thing. This is just personally speaking. It doesn't look great. I actually prefer the look of the Galaxy Nexus, which I never threw any parades over. Like, the Galaxy Nexus, I was like, whatever. It's kind of like, it's a teardrop. It's fine. But I think the Galaxy Nexus is better looking.
Yeah, I sort of agree. The Nexus 4 is nondescript, but at the same time, it kind of looks a little badass because it's literally like one piece of glass on the front that's the same color and shape. Like, I mean, on the Galaxy Nexus, if you put it next to the Nexus 4, you can see the screen on the Galaxy Nexus because it's blue tinted, as Samsung Super AMOLEDs tend to be. Mm-hmm. But on the LCD display on the Nexus 4, it's just like one big glass panel thing.
Can I tell you what? I don't mind the blue tint, but you have made me remember something. Remind us, the Nexus 4 does not have a curved screen glass, right?
Right. It's got little tapers around the edges.
Right, which, fine. That feels great under a thumb and whatever. Nobody really does it. But that's one of the things I loved about the Nexus S and the Galaxy Nexus, was that a manufacturer had decided that, yes, we're going to make another bar phone, and, they all look the same, all these slabs, but we're going to curve the glass. I know the display itself wasn't curved, and some people saw it as a gimmick, but the way, just that minuscule way in which it contoured to one's face while you're having a phone call, and like you could look at it edge on and see that it had that sort of suggestion of a banana shape. I mean, that's awesome. I think that's a cool way to make a phone feel different and look different. And I was sad to see that wasn't there on the 4. Sorry, Tony.
If you flex your muscles, you can put some raw force in and you can bend the Nexus 4 just that tiny little bit.
Tony, bring me my blowtorch.
Yeah, I miss the shape of the Galaxy Nexus. It definitely was unique. So to wrap up the thought thread here. There are some good things about the Nexus 4. The screen is gorgeous. It's got fantastic viewing angles, amazing color saturation, and it just looks really good. It's a little bit warm, a little bit orange tinted, but that's not the worst thing ever. It's fast, day-to-day operation. It's not blow-away fast, but it's definitely one of the fastest Androids, if not the fastest Android. It's got Android 4.2, which has some pretty cool niceties, like the photosphere thing, which is fascinating to use. It's best when you're not moving. So if you're sitting in like your living room or whatever, and you're like, oh, I want to make like a 360 degree, or it's more than that. It's like a complete sphere. You can do the ceilings and the floors. It's really cool.
That's madness. Yeah, it was Joe Levi who did a video demoing Photosphere, right?
Yeah,
and it looks fascinating. And I mean, panorama is interesting enough, but the photosphere I feel like is a really good idea. Have you taken a lot of interior photos with it?
Yeah, kind of pointlessly, but it's fun. It really is.
Oh, well, let me ask you before we get off the Nexus 4, the camera. I mean, in general, photosphere aside, is the camera an improvement over the Galaxy Nexus? Please say yes.
It's an improvement over the Galaxy Nexus, but it's not better than the Galaxy S3, for example. It's an okay camera. It's just okay.
Okay.
And so my concluding thought for this. Oh my God, my phone.
Wait, you're going to wrap it up, but I'm sorry, I have to jump in with one more question that because I haven't had my hands on one yet. The LED notification light, I know it's tiny on this new one, right?
Yeah.
Is it white only, or is there support for multiple colors?
I'm only seeing white. I need to get what's that called?
Light flow.
Light flow.
Light flow. I need to get light flow on here, which I think requires root, right?
No, it doesn't require root, but it also doesn't work uniformly across devices. So it's kind of a mixed bag whether it'll work or not.
All right. Well, I'm going to do that in advance of the review, and
sweet.
I'll let you know.
Now you can wrap. I'm sorry. I needed that answered. Pressing questions from a concerned listener.
My Nexus 4 was just sliding off the table again. It's unbelievable.
I'm not surprised.
Can I be mean, guys?
Oh, please be mean.
Yeah, be mean.
There's a saying around here. I'm sure there's a similar saying in the U.S. too. What did you expect for that triple price? I mean, that's a super price, which doesn't really matter. It's a $200-something phone subsidized from Google. I know it's good to be critic and to criticize the device and the platform itself. I'd say we would be more entitled to criticize this if you guys lived in a region where I do, where we don't have Google Play, and e-tailers sell the phone for like 400 or 500 euros. But for $200 and something, this is a great phone.
Yeah, sort of. It's unfortunate. It is a great price. It's a great value, but the expectations were far too high for this phone. And so my concluding thought was going to be the dirty little secret on why the Nexus 4 is so cheap is because Google said, let's make a cheap phone. And in order to do that, we're going to have to partner with a manufacturer who can make this super cheap. We're going to do things to help our economics. Like we're going to leave an LTE chip in the phone, even though we're not going to give it LTE support because that's a little bit cheaper for every model that we make if we keep it exactly the same as an existing motherboard. So they did that. Then they said, well, we got to make this thing look high-end, so we're going to do this like back plating with the glass and the little shiny things on the back. But we're going to work with LG on this because they can make it real cheap. And we're going to make it like it's not real cheap. We're going to put an S4 Pro in it. It's going to be the most expensive component in the whole darn phone. And people are going to think that this is the high, but I'm not buying it. I'm skeptical, and I need a little bit more time with this to get my final opinion. There's no doubt it's a good phone, but it hasn't met my expectations, and I don't expect that over the next few days it's going to wow me any further.
I tend to disagree.
What you think is he's going to get more impressed?
No, not about that. Oh. I tend to disagree about the fact that it's a cheap phone. It's not a cheap phone. The reason for the low price is, I think, Google subsidizing it. The real price of this phone is the price which we see it listed in European countries which don't have the Google Play Store or anywhere else in the world. I think the difference is Google chipping in on the price. Because they want to grow the fan base, the user base, they want to help LG, because you name it, the reason why. But this is not the price of the phone. The real price of the phone is around $500-600.
And that's probably true. But if they went with Samsung for the Nexus 4 and they did a very similar phone, they would have had to subsidize it even more, maybe $25 more per unit, which would be extremely expensive over millions of devices.
Yeah, I feel like LG probably had a pretty significant incentive not to put too high a price tag on this partnership with Google, because the LG is desperately in need of more visibility, and I feel like they are the company who would work for cheap.
That plus you cannot have 3 consecutive phones made by Samsung. I mean, they're probably their top OEM partner, but Google cannot neglect the rest of them.
Yeah, but Google could have gone back to HTC, who is also scrambling. Me too. Who's also, the HTC is trying to scramble back to visibility again. But I feel like HTC still has more clout than LG does. This is based on known facts, just
for
perception.
The moment, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. Like a couple days in, Brandon Miniman thinks the Nexus 4 is a Kia with rhinestones glued to it.
That's putting it harshly.
Yes, it is.
My point is that if your expectations are that this is going to be the best, most incredible Android phone ever to exist, and that it's super high quality in terms of everything, just keep your expectations checked. It's still a good phone, but it's not going to knock your socks off.
That is really good advice, and it's also a really, really good segue into something that could have been the next best, amazing, just market-destroying Android device.
Ooh, superlatives.
Yes, I know, right? I'm just getting all hyperbolic on this Wednesday before Thanksgiving. The Droid DNA review went up. I wrote it. It went up a couple days ago.
It's already in your DNA.
Yes, I have a massive genetic mutation that has happened. So the DNA is on its way to Brandon right now as we speak to do some more videos and to get it under Brandon's freakishly awesome eyeballs to see if he can discern any pixels from half inch away. But my God, I do like this phone. And we talked about it a lot on last week's podcast, and you guys asked me a lot of questions about it. It was very similar to what we just did for the Nexus 4, but I've had more time to get to know it. I've had more time to remember the things I like and don't like about Sense and see what they've brought new in the Sense thing. I've had more time to hate on the camera a little bit. But, oh, man. For someone who values how a phone feels in the hand, for someone who values a good build quality, it is really hard to beat the Droid DNA. I mean, it just is an amazing device to hold, I think. And I might be talking it up a little bit. Maybe next week, Brandon, you'll come back and you say, what are you talking about? I can't handle this soft-touch, sharp-edged nonsense. But no, it's great. And also, the screen is, of course, beautiful. But my question is, and maybe you guys can help me, because I truly don't understand this. HTC, we kind of know how they feel about battery life, because they've run focus groups. We ran that story, which was, for some reason, stuck in my mind better than almost any other story we've run, where HTC ran all these focus groups, and they determined that people care more about thinness than battery life. So we know what their attitude is on that. The non-removable battery shouldn't really surprise us that much. Its milliamp hour rating maybe should irritate us, considering the power-hungry screen, but none of that matters as much as the non-removable storage, the non-expandable storage. Because unless you can live most of your life in the cloud, then 16 gigs of storage, only a little over half of which or whatever is user accessible, that's not enough.
Not enough.
For anyone. Especially if you're going to be taking video, 1080p video, you're going to be downloading 1080p movies. You want to use HTC Beats for some reason to destroy your music, and listen to a lot of your music on the go. Why? And we know RAM as a component cost isn't that pricey, right? We know that the Apple prices iPhones at $100 spacing between 16 and 32. Or
you mean
Flash?
Flash.
Oh, I'm sorry, not RAM. Flash. Yeah, that's what I mean.
ROM.
ROM, storage. But we know, the Apple prices it at $100 levels, but we know it only costs them what, $10 for an extra 8 gigs of storage. So, why would HTC do this? Do you guys have any speculation?
I have something. Yeah.
Handicapping they did. Go ahead.
The biggest problem with the Droid DNA is that it is a Verizon exclusive. So if this phone was an unlocked phone available on all carriers or internationally, I think HTC would have went with the 32 gig version, just like the One X. Or maybe the 64 gig version like the One X Plus, or maybe both. So I'm thinking that we'll see the Droid DNA on Verizon with these options. They have it first, and then when the HTC Deluxe comes out, regardless if it's going to be this holiday season, CES, or MWC, we'll see 32 and 64 gig options for the masses.
Okay, so, and, I was going to mention that too. It is going to come out as the Deluxe internationally, and commenters have been overjoyed about that, and rightfully so. But why would you intentionally hobble? The Butterfly J launched in Japan, and that was a big deal, and whatever. When you're launching, in America, that is no less significant a launch. And when you're launching on Verizon Wireless, it's a very high-profile launch, considering it's launching as a Droid. So why would you hobble it with 16 gigs of storage only? Why would you wait to include more storage on the international one?
It's a cost savings.
But
and
how
in the case of the Droid DNA, they figured that people would look past that specification and say, "Oh my God, it's got a 1080p screen." What I want to see, and you guys remember when 3.5 millimeter headphone jacks didn't come on all phones, and everyone was really upset, and in every review it was like, lack of 3.5 millimeter headphone jack sucks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then HTC came out and said, you know what, for every one of our phones in the future, we're going to have 3.5 millimeter headphone jacks, and they did it, and everyone in the industry did it. We need to do the same thing about micro SD storage expansion and make a stink about it, because I think it's so much better to have a phone with like 8 gigabytes of storage and a micro SD expansion than 16 gigs and no ability to expand the memory in the future.
Yeah. And we've seen on the Nokia Lumia 810, you can put the micro SD card slot right on top of the SIM card slot, so you can save space on that footprint, because the SIM card has to be there anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I agree. Why omit it?
Plus, don't forget, guys, that HTC had, and I think they still have, the agreement with Dropbox. I mean, if they put 32 gigs and 64 gig versions, or, 32 plus SD card options on a phone, nobody will care about activating their free 50 gig Dropbox account. I'm not sure if that option is still available, but again, they have partnerships, and the trend is to move everything to the cloud, whether we like it or not.
It is, and that's going to be fine long term, but right now, with data crunches and carriers giving us data caps and all this stuff, we really need more storage. I just discovered recently, I feel like an idiot, that Spotify lets you download playlists, and I know that's like one of the key... I know. And I know that's one of the keystone features, but, it's so cool to be able to download, 500 songs over Wi-Fi and then be able to take it with you and not have to worry about, each song is 10 megabytes against your data plan.
Right. And that's why Spotify is so crucial particularly for us, right? Because we're switching devices all the time, and I don't want to have to pop out my micro SD card and put it in a phone that maybe doesn't support micro SD and sync it on my computer and cables and Wi-Fi sync and all that kind of. No, just fire up your Spotify client and download your songs, what playlist you want, to the new device. I'm glad that you found out how to do that.
It was really pretty easy.
Yeah. once you discovered it was possible. But, you know, I was trying to listen to music on Spotify just last night. I was coming back from whatever. I was coming back from the theater or the bar or something like that. And I was like on a train that had, you know, I had HSPA coverage, but I didn't have LTE coverage. And for some reason it was being slow or whatever. I don't know what phone I was using. And I just couldn't get the music fast enough. And the track was skipping in my ears. And I was like, this is so absolutely frustrating. Why can't I just have the music on the device? Oh, right, because I don't have enough storage on the device. I completely agree. I think microSD should be a standard. I think it's absurd that almost all mid-range phones have it, but these high-end devices are, for some reason, having their microSD capabilities removed.
Trade-off.
Critical.
It's just absurd. So, and that's been, you know, that's not just us being tech nerds. I mean, this is what the commenters have been complaining about, almost universally in the comments. They shake their fist about the battery life a little bit, or they complain it's too big or whatever. But no, like 90% of the negative comments are, HTC, why did you cripple this thing? Why did you get 16 gigs of storage? It's not enough.
And a PSA here, do not get the Nexus 4 with 8 gigabytes of storage. You will run out within 2 days if you are planning on downloading any number of apps. Because you start off with about 6 gigabytes, maybe even 5.5, and you download like Shadowgun, which is 1 gigabyte. You download a couple of Spotify playlists, you're done. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. An 8 gigabyte device on the market, like masquerading as a high-end device, is not, shouldn't exist.
It's aimed towards those who are, like me, happy to live in a region with unlimited data and fast speeds wherever I go.
Yeah, I know it. And I think that's kind of the thing, right? Because there's this prejudice that says only people who live out on like a farm in Piedmont, South Dakota, can't live in the cloud. And it's not true. You know, I mean, we've talked about this before. I live in a very, very thickly settled city that is very technologically advanced and relatively prosperous. And I still can't, you know, I can't exist in the cloud because the whole damn public transportation system is underground.
And also, don't forget that when you, it's much more gentle on your battery if you've got, if you're, you know, if you're storing versus streaming.
Very good point. Exactly. Yeah, there are still really significant merits to storing versus streaming, and yeah, well, we should probably move on. But Brandon, you're going to have the DNA by the time we talk next week. I'll be looking forward to hearing you talk about it. Tony, I can't wait to hear it until you can get your hands on whether it's the deluxe or a version of the DNA or something like that, because I think you will find a lot to like about it just from a hardware sense. I just want to say one more thing. I think it's a really, really great how they decided to do the 5-inch screen thing, where they didn't widen it, they didn't decide to make it into a big like Galaxy Note 2 thing, they just stretched it. It feels so great in the hand that I just can't get over it.
Go ahead. You keep talking about how the DNA is not a phablet, and it sounds like that's a really big headline here.
It is. I think it's the most important thing ever, and they said it right on stage in the New York City event. They went out of their way to make that point very clear. And it's not clear on the video, because video has this thing where it robs scale, right? I mean, even next to the Galaxy Note 2, they don't look all that similar, but you put the DNA in your hand, and it's very clear what this thing is. You know, it's very, very much the next step up from the 1X, not anywhere in the same region as the Galaxy Note or the Galaxy Note 2. So we'll talk more about it next week. This is still a really hot device, and Brandon's going to have his own thoughts to bring to it, and I can't wait to hear them, especially with regard to viewing angles. We could talk about this phone all day, but we can't. We got to move on. And Tony's bored over there. But this may not rescue him from it, because I don't know, Brandon. First of all, it's been such an absolutely absurd holiday season. This is my first holiday season with Pocketnow, and I didn't realize how crazy things get. So today I'm putting together the podcast outline, and I'm like, Kindle Fire HD 8.9 unboxing and first impression. Who did this? Oh, Brandon did this. When did he do this? Like, I haven't even had a chance to look up from all the craziness of the holiday season and actually see things. Brandon, is this something to get excited about, or is it lame? I haven't even had time to watch the video.
It's a very niche device, and I think it's really good for mom, dad, grandpa, grandma who just want to sort of live in this island of content, and that's it.
So, I mean, is it still I guess the really relevant question I want to ask about any Kindle product is, why would I buy it instead of say, a Nexus 7? And we know I'm a giant Nexus 7 fanboy, so it's a crappy question coming from me, but go ahead.
Well, the 8.9 starts at $299, and the Nexus 10 starts $100 higher, so there's the price.
I mean the 7, not the 10.
And then there is the, the ease of use and the comfort. The Kindle Fire HD is just nice to hold in the hand. Again, it's not intended for power users. It really isn't. It's intended for mom and dad, and it's really good for mom and dad.
Safe to assume that the Kindle Fire is the iPad of the Android ecosystem? Not for power users, for people who want everything to work without any tweaks, out of the box, content consumption, consumer tablet.
Well, I feel like the Nexus 7 is already that. I feel like Google did what they wanted to do with the Nexus 7, which was to say, hey, Kindle Fire, eat asphalt. You know what I mean? Like, here, this does everything you need it to do out of the box. And it has a content store, which is really good. And, it's reliable, and it's stable, and it runs the latest Android build without a skin. And it's always been more responsive than any Kindle, and it will remain so. So, like, I just don't get why the Kindle... I think the Kindle still exists because it's right for some people, but I just wonder if... I wonder how much longer that dominance will last in that arena.
There's one thing that's for sure is that the speakers on the Kindle Fire HD 7 and 8.9 are unlike anything. If you guys have a chance to play with one at a store, hit a video like a movie and play it at high volume, and you'll be amazed. It's unbelievable what they've done with the speakers.
Really?
It somehow simulates surround sound, and I turned behind me. I'm like, oh my god, what happened? What was that? And I'm like, oh, there's sort of a surround effect. It's amazing. It's not gimmicky at all. You'd think it would be stupid and gimmicky. Oh, surround speakers on a tablet. It actually sounds like surround sound. It's the weirdest thing. It's awesome.
That does sound awesome. I suddenly want to try this product now. Are they front firing? Like, what, do they come out the sides? What do they do?
They're backfiring, and I don't know how they do it. I don't know. Unicorns must be inside.
Brain waves.
Yeah. Well, cool. Are you doing a review?
I don't think I'm going to do a full review. I don't think it's really something that our audience cared that much about. So
yeah, probably not.
First impressions, I think, is as far as we're going to go on it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep on pushing on here because we actually have some Windows 8, Windows Phone 8 stuff to talk about. I've seen, I don't know about you guys, I want to ask you if you've seen some Microsoft ads recently because Boston has been papered with them. I have seen entire T stations, our subway system, just papered with Microsoft Surface ads. So the effect is when you round a corner, you come onto the train platform and you see into the distance, and every single one of these 30 or 40 billboard spots is like this brightly colored pink or cyan or whatever Microsoft Surface RT ad. And then there have been Windows Phone 8 banners all over the place. Have you guys started to see Microsoft advertisements in the flesh, like not just on TV, but in your area?
You keep forgetting where I live.
I know. I just hold out hope that maybe they'll steal some banner placement from Samsung, because I know Samsung advertises over there.
Nonstop.
I've seen a lot of Surface ads. I think we talked about this in the last podcast, but I haven't seen that many Windows Phone ads, maybe a few on TV. Can we talk about this ridiculous video that Microsoft put out that we were going to talk about first, where they're like, here's the highest end Windows Phone ever, and here's a 2-year-old piece of crap Android phone that no one owns anymore.
Are you talking about the Meet Your Match?
Is that crazy? Is that freaking nuts?
Wait, hold on. Well, yes, Brandon, you've done a very interesting job of just completely demolishing my segue. But yes, absolutely. Thanks, man. Yeah, Tony, you wrote this thing, and what is the story? Can you tell us, for listeners who have not seen this Meet Your Match campaign?
Well, probably everybody remembers the campaign which kicked off at this year's CES with the Smoked by Windows Phone, where Microsoft employees running Windows Phone 7 were facing off people on the street, trying to show how Windows Phone 7 is faster than you name it. Mm-hmm. And now with Windows Phone 8, Microsoft is taking it one step further, and they have renamed and rebranded the entire campaign from from smoked by Windows Phone to meet your match with Windows Phone. And this is basically something which is not only emphasizing on speed, but Microsoft tries to convince people on the street that the Windows Phone is the phone that they need, is the phone for them. So it's not only about performance, but about also ease of use, about services, about features in general.
Okay. I mean, does it? And from Brandon's tone, I'm guessing that maybe these ads, how do you say, suck a little bit.
Well, they compare it to different phones, and I know Brandon's stance on this, and I was exactly like this. I mean, comparing a Windows Phone 8X by HTC or an AT&T Nokia Lumia 920 with a BlackBerry or a 2-year-old Android phone. Come on, Microsoft.
Right.
But then again, somebody commented in defense of Microsoft, and he was like, okay, guys, what should Microsoft do if those phones are actually out there on the streets? I mean, just think about this. People who bought these phones with 2-year contracts, there are still many people stuck with those phones. So it's not Microsoft's fault that they probably met every, 20th person running a 2-year-old Android phone, but marketing just kicks in and they select probably those. And they just deleted those with the...
So they roll up to a guy and he's like, hey, do you want to do this video? Let's compare this 920 to what do you got in your pocket? And he whips out a Galaxy S3 and they're like, oh, no, never mind, just kidding. Hey, you over there, you got a Thunderbolt in your pocket. Let's try a comparison.
Do the videos feature any comparisons against like a modern high-end device?
I haven't seen all of them. They are 10 if I have counted them right, but I haven't seen all of them. Probably yes. I know it's lame, but I don't like these campaigns at all.
Yeah, like I get what they're trying to do with it, but it always seems, to me, that these kind of things always reek of desperation is the wrong word, but kind of this like trying too hard. It's like the Bing ones, right, where the guys are on the street and they're like, here's 2 searches and it's a blind search test and oh, Bing won. You know, you chose Bing. You like Bing better. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't know.
I found one with an iPhone 3GS. That's very relevant. Very good.
Right.
Yeah, and there's this girl with the iPhone 5 who apparently doesn't even get to typing the SMS message by the time Ben, the PC guy, has already sent it out, and she just concludes that the iPhone 5 sucks. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
She sucks. She can't even get to the friggin'...
Well, it's interesting. I mean, like, this is all very curious, and about what it says interesting things about Microsoft's push behind Windows Phone, and I'm glad to see. You remember when the Windows Phone 7 the first push came out, and like the ads were everywhere. Like since then we haven't really seen any of that, and it's nice to see it visible again. As a matter of fact, I was at a concert, or I was somewhere, and some friend of mine asked me what phone I was using because I had my 920 out.
What phone were you using today?
Exactly, right? But no, I had my, it was either my 810, the 810 review unit, or my 920. And she asks me, she's like, oh, is that the new Windows Phone? Where normally the question, for the past 2 years almost would have been, what is that? That's weird. Does that run Android? Like, is that a smartphone? Like, these are all variations on the questions I used to get. But no, instead, finally, someone, and this is totally a non-geek, and she's like, is that the new Windows Phone? I'm like, wow, interesting brand recognition actually happening. Yeah, that is great. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of that. And I felt, once again, like it was 6 or 8 months ago, and people were asking me, oh, is that the new Galaxy? And I'm like, oh wow, you understand what a Galaxy S product is? Like what?
It's like a baby saying its first word. You're like the world's starting to learn the language, and you're like, and they say, is that the new Galaxy? And you're like, oh, okay, yes, it's the new Galaxy. Yeah. It's technically the Galaxy S3, the third iteration of the Galaxy. But yes, you are right.
But just saying Galaxy, you're just in a whole new class.
Yes,
good for you. Yeah. Exactly. No, so I mean, I think that's nice, and I think that no matter how crappy some of these ads are, and whatever from Microsoft, it's just nice to see the Windows Phone getting a little bit of mind share, because you can't win. You cannot win if nobody knows what your product is. It's a bad sign if people don't know it exists. Go ahead, Tony.
This is exactly what Samsung did with the Samsung Galaxy S3 versus iPhone 5 poster. I mean, they highlighted all the super awesome features which are only on the Galaxy S3, and of course the iPhone 5 doesn't have them. And on this exact vein, there's a Microsoft video showing off kids corner on a Windows phone, and I'm just trying to imagine how Ben, the PC guy, walks up to this woman, and he was like, "Okay, can your phone do kids corner?" And I'm just going ahead and imagining how she whips out her, I don't know, Galaxy Nexus, and she's like, "No, but can your Windows phone fire up Google Now?" It's the same thing.
Yeah,
Just
this apples to oranges
stop
nonsense,
comparing features which are platform specific. Try to do things which people do on a day-to-day basis and be fair and compare those features which are across all platforms.
It's like he goes up and says, "Does your phone share the same code base with Windows 8?" It's like, come on, why don't you pick the most proprietary thing possible and ask if she has it?
Yeah, but
No, but I have Smart Stay.
Yeah. Exactly. My phone doesn't shut off when I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Mofo.
Oh God, yeah. You know, I don't know, when you do these platform wars, and this is something that I've been struggling with as well, with this kind of Windows Phone versus, in my case, Android kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, some of these things are platform specific, you can't compare them, but because they're platform specific and they don't have an analog on the other platform, you're like, wow, I really, really miss that. You know, or wow, I really, really can't stand that I don't have this anymore because I jump platforms and there isn't an equivalent.
Don't you guys wish somebody would step up to you and try to convince you that X phone or X platform is better than yours? Just like, yeah, you're still Pocketnow editors, you're still in the tech, and I just wish to see Ben, the PC guy, stepping up to Brandon Miniman, trying to convince him that the Windows Phone 8X by HTC does fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I mean, like, because it's a hard pitch, right? I mean, especially even to normal people, but to tech geeks especially. But I don't know. I mean, you know, there's so much. I was talking about my experience with Windows Phone to a friend of mine recently, and I was like, it feels like I've moved into a really nice house that has almost no furniture inside it.
That's interesting.
It's a very, very spare experience so far.
Look at the ceiling, man.
Yeah, I know exactly. No, I mean, I feel like I'm sleeping on in a room with a vaulted ceiling with a beautiful mural on the top, and it's like got 6 fireplaces, but I'm sleeping on an air mattress.
Michael, tell us how you're getting along with the 920. Are you still in love?
This is why. Yeah, I've just had some time with it because finally all these reviews are sort of done for the moment, and it's sitting right next to me on its wireless charging plate, which I like.
Oh, how cute!
Isn't it? And I'm still learning its little language with how often it blinks the light on the charging plate. I don't really read manuals too well, so anyway, you know, it's been interesting. And I am currently in the midst of, I'm still kind of embroiled in this location-based services standoff between my Lumia 920 and these other devices. I'm going to write a piece on that today when I take a train ride, and that'll be fun. But, you know, it's been nice getting to know Windows Phone and using the 920 as my kind of primary device for a bit. And the only fully formed thoughts I have at this moment, besides the fact that it's very Spartan, and I really miss Spotify, and I really miss Pandora, and I'm annoyed that I have to wait until Q1 of 2013 for these really important apps.
Sign up for Zune, or what's their name now?
Yeah.
Xbox Music.
I'm gonna have to do that. I actually am gonna have to do that because I'm really annoyed about that. I'm annoyed that that's one of these symptoms of this platform, I think, being rushed out the door, and apps developers really having to be cajoled into making something. Because come on, again. Spotify, how hard could it be? I don't mean to say that coding is easy. I don't mean to say that developing an app is easy. It's not. It's very, very hard. But like your Spotify, right? You have a massive amount of popularity. You have a huge mind share. You've got to have some employees. How hard would it be to just make a stopgap app to run on Windows Phone 8?
Just think about this. How long did it take for Spotify to release an iPad application? They just recently did that. I mean, I remember being in London for the Galaxy S3 event at the beginning of May, and I was still trying to get used to the application. So it took them years and years.
Okay.
And they had the iPhone application. It's not about time. I think it's about whether they want to do it or not.
And that's exactly it. And Pandora is the same thing. It's like everyone who bought a Lumia 920 is going to get Pandora 1 for free for a year. Hey, that's awesome. That's really legit. Wait, what do you mean I have to wait until January or February or March to get Pandora?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. I have another friend who works for a company in the medical field, and Microsoft kind of came to them when they were talking about Windows 8 a couple months ago. They're like, we want you to develop an app for Windows 8. And my friend was like, yeah, all right, that's cool. But Microsoft wouldn't give them any developer hardware and, like, apparently, didn't support. This is like anecdotal evidence is anecdotal and whatever, yeah, but I feel like that Microsoft has done a really good job in getting the app marketplace for Windows Phone 7 from 100,000 apps to 120,000 apps in a very short amount of time. The growth is great. But for me, a lot of the apps that I want and need are missing.
So besides that, Michael, how's your overall experience with it?
It's been, it is. I'm still developing my feelings on it. There's still a lot I love about it, but I feel like I was oversold on Windows Phone 8. I feel like
I also have a question.
Well, hold on. I feel like I was oversold on the platform, and frankly, I think the pure view aspect is a little overblown as well.
Really? I thought it has night vision. Doesn't it see light where other phones do not, which is actually kind of cool.
Excuse me. Yes, no, it does. But you can watch it work, right? You take a photo, it generates the photo, and right before the photo slides over to the left into the gallery, you see it brighten. And then you slide back and you're like, oh yeah, that is brighter. But it's not, magical. It's applying some software effects to bring the light out. And I don't know enough about cameras to talk about how that differs from maybe taking the same image, putting it into a cheap photo editor or a free photo editor and bumping up the exposure level a little bit. But that's what it looks like it's doing. And, that's fine. It makes for a brighter picture, but it also does that in daylight. And we've complained about this already. Where, like, you're trying to take a picture in normal lighting, and it's like, oh, I see you've overexposed a lot of this photo for some reason. Thanks, Pure View. So it's not a crappy camera. I'm not saying that by any means. It's a good camera. But once again, it's one of those things where it's like you guys basically sold us on optical image stabilization, which is pretty cool, but I still get blur in my shots if I use the shutter button. So why? I don't know. I feel at the moment like I do like this device a lot. I also feel like it's not quite the finished product that everyone wants to think it is. And I think after a software update or two, and after the app marketplace grows a little bit, I think in February, around roundabouts, this will be the device that I want it to be today. And that's okay. I'm willing to wait. I'm not going to return it. I still love a lot about it. I'm sorry that I'm talking about the negatives exclusively, but there's a lot of positives to it. And the fact I always tell people it's heavier than the Galaxy Note 2, and they always say the same thing. They're like, really? And then they hold it and they're like, yeah, but I don't care. It feels so nice. And that's how I feel too. So, there's a lot of thought yet to be developed on this thing. But if you bought one on AT&T in the past couple days, you might be able to get one. You may be able to get some money back. This is a story that Stephen Schenk posted yesterday, I think, about people. AT&T is doing this Black Friday fire sale. Not fire sale. Well, I'm an idiot. They're doing this Black Friday sale where $99 apparently is just not cheap enough for this flagship Windows Phone 8. So they are cutting the price in half for Black Friday, which for our non-American listeners is the day after Thanksgiving. And apparently some people have been irritated about this on the WP Central forums, and they've contacted AT&T virtual chat support on the AT&T website, and AT&T has been willing in several instances to credit them the $50 difference, which is, golf claps all around, right? I mean, good job, AT&T, for being, understanding and human. I don't know. And I think Stephen puts in a couple disclaimers where he says, don't expect this to work for everybody, and, your mileage may vary, but it's nice to see AT&T,
be nice to people.
Throwing a bone to people, exactly. So if you are in our boat, I already got enough free stuff. I'm fine. I got my my free wireless charging plate, and I feel like $99 is a more than fair price for this flagship level smartphone. Stark, though some of its software may be. So I'm fine with it. But for those not lucky enough to be on Windows Phone 8 hardware right now, we got word that Windows Phone 7.8, the gap filler for those running on older hardware, is going to arrive in 2013. This is a rumor, not a rumor, but this is a sort of like this is a screen cap from a Nokia site from China, is that right?
That is one report, and then there's another report,
what's that
which
one
is
say?
also coming from Nokia. I know that because I wrote this one. It just came one day after the initial report. So the initial report was that Windows Phone 7.8 will be arriving in early 2013. The second report, which I wrote about, was allegedly originating from a Nokia developer meeting in Asia Pacific, when allegedly it has been said that Windows Phone 7.8 has been released to manufacturing, and the update might be landing in the next days to weeks. Of course, you
Which
can
one?
ask a ton of questions, whether it will be arriving only to Nokia phones, whether it will be arriving only to Asian Pacific regions, but there are two different reports with two different timestamps and time frames in the rumor mill.
Which one is the more recent one, Tony?
The one I wrote.
Wow, I'm sorry I missed that. I should have put that one on the story and not.
The one I wrote is from November 17, and the other one, which
from
Jaime
November
Rivera
16.
wrote, is from November 16.
Right. So two conflicting stories on this. I hope that for people on the 900, the 800, and the 710, et cetera, don't have to wait until the first quarter of 2013 to get their 7.8 update, because it's obviously a very significant update. I don't know. We'll see which one of the. Do you guys have any active 7 series devices? You guys personally?
I have to dust off my LG Optimus 7.
I've got a Focus, but it doesn't turn on anymore.
Oh no! Why did you try and root it?
What's that?
I said, did you try and root it?
No, I don't think so. I might have thrown it against a wall, but I don't have any reason to do so. I liked the Focus.
I liked the Focus too. What's funny is I got a commenter, one of our one of our commenters left me a comment talking about my complaints on maps, where he's talking about, try driving from Boston to San Diego and using Google Maps and see how you like it. Then try Bing. And I'm like, wow, that's really fascinating. I drove from Long Island to San Diego, and I did use Bing Maps on Windows Phone 7. What a prescient comment, you inflammatory person. As a matter of fact, I hated it, but whatever. It's very funny to think back on my days with the Samsung Focus, and they feel like a long time ago.
I have a question. I might sound dumb, but again, I will always say this to my excuse. I am from Europe, so I don't know. Do you guys have roaming rates when you go, I don't know, from one state to the other, from Pennsylvania to New York?
No, that used to be the case. That used to be the case, but no longer. Most national carriers offer free roaming.
So basically, when you are using Google Maps for navigation, going from one state to the other, it's just your local normal rates, or it counts against your allowance?
It counts against your data allotment, whether you're on your front porch or whether you're in Hawaii. Yeah.
I understood. Okay, because I was thinking about reasons for me to use Google Maps as navigation when I drive to Berlin or to Barcelona, crossing 5 or 6 countries. And of course, in Europe, there are roaming rates. But if the states are the same as, for instance, a domestic country, a domestic region in Romania or any other country in Europe, then you have no other rates. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Michael, do you remember when back in the early cell phone days, if you went out of your hometown, you'd be roaming and you'd be charged more?
Absolutely.
Like really early 90s.
Well, that was even late 90s and into the early part of the 21st century, because I remember, yes. I remember when I went to college, we talked about this last week, and getting my first cell phone. I was like, so I can use this in Virginia. I'm in New York now, but I can use it in Virginia? They're like, yep, doesn't matter where you call, whatever you do, it's nationwide. I'm like, wow.
I am still shocked, and I continue to be shocked until the U.S. carriers will probably yank this stupid idea that you guys in the U.S. have to pay for incoming calls. I find that to be the most stupid thing ever.
Counts against our minute allotment? Yeah, it is dumb. And there used to be something called first incoming minute free that you could try and finagle your carrier out of.
That's funny.
Yeah. So people would call you, and for 59 seconds you'd talk, and they're like, okay, gotta go, bye.
No, it's stupid. You come to think of it, it's stupid. And I'm glad here in Europe we don't have that.
I'm just glad I don't use the phone anymore. My voicemail doesn't work. My Google Voice call forwarding is so inconsistent for some reason now, probably because there's so many phones it's forwarding to, that when I get a voicemail, I just don't even. I don't even check it. Because everyone knows I don't talk on the phone anymore.
Do you guys leave messages on a voicemail?
I don't. Do you leave messages? Why is that like a?
No, I mean the first thing I do when I purchase a new prepaid SIM or I sign a new contract is to disable the voicemail, because nobody actually leaves a message. I mean, when somebody listens to my greeting message like, "Hey, this is Tony. You know what you have to do," they just hang up. And I'm the same. I don't want to leave a message. I want to talk to somebody.
I hate. Can I talk for a second about voicemail? I know this isn't.
Yeah, I mean, we're already in the weeds.
There are two big problems with voicemail. Number one is that people's voicemail messages, when you hear the recording, are way too long. This is usually how it goes. Hey, this is Michael, and you have reached 555-1212. I am unable to come to the phone right now, but if you want to leave your name, address, phone number, and favorite color, I will call you back at some time in the future. Now wait for the beep, and when it sounds, I want you to... And it just like...
It's true.
So my voicemail just says, "Hi, this is Brandon. Please leave a message." And so that's the first problem. The second problem is that people leave entirely too long voicemails, which is why I'm very delighted that Google Voice translates it into text, so you can read it, you can scan it, you don't have to listen to all of the ums and ahs and the hesitations.
Oh,
voicemail sucks.
But voicemail sucks. That's a good. You're right. Google Voice does transcribe people's voice messages into emails that it then sends you, or it just stays in the Google Voice interface. But its transcription is the most hilariously wrong thing, just all the time. I had a habit for about a year of whenever somebody would leave me a voicemail, I would take the transcription, copy and paste it into Facebook, and just share it with my friends. I'm like, anyone want to help me figure out what this actually says? Because it was just ridiculous. It's like, "Hey, Michael, Srob went to Bear Town and bank attack. Look out for love you, bye."
I used to use this.
As funny as Google Translate.
Yes.
It's terrible. I used to use this service called Line 1 Translation, and they actually had humans do the transcriptions, and they were incredibly accurate. But unfortunately, you paid like 10 cents per message, which just wasn't feasible. But yeah, the translation's hilariously bad.
Anyway, let's come back to Windows Phone 8 to close it out real quick, because Adam Lane did a City Lens video in New York City where he showed Nokia's City Lens. I want to say that if you're going to get a Windows Phone, I think getting a Nokia phone is still a good call because of all the added functionality it brings to fill some of these Windows Phone 8 gaps. But City Lens is, if you don't know, is an augmented reality application. Do you? This, to me, I'm going to ask what you guys think about this, but to me, augmented reality is the biggest letdown of the smartphone world. Not because when I first saw it, I will always remember where I was when I first saw a demo of it, and I'm like, really? You just hold your phone up and it superimposes like where the local Pizza Hut is on top of the image that your camera viewfinder. That's awesome. But in practice, it's always awkward and it's always just weird. If you're using it in person, like I did in New York City last week, like you're holding your phone out in front of you, up at eye level, and yes, you can see where you're going because the phone's camera optic is energized, and so you can kind of like see it. But it's not comfortable. It's not really any more useful than using a map application, depending on your map application, I guess. What's the and Adam was having some, Adam was just giving us a rundown in his video. I mean, what's the use case here? Have you guys ever found any augmented reality app useful?
No.
No.
Brandon, you had a video. Do you remember that video when you showed up that application on the iPhone?
It translates.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great idea.
Oh,
that
yeah.
is incredible. Like, it's called, I think it's called World Lens or Word Lens.
No idea. We'll have to look it up.
Remember, we have
to look it up. It's available for all platforms now. It is awesome.
Really?
Like, you hold your camera up to a stop sign, and what is stop in Spanish?
Call Jaime.
All right, what is stop in Russian, Tony?
Stoy.
Okay, it'll say that, but it'll actually take the text. It won't just like superimpose like Times New Roman. It'll actually change the text of the stop sign to read "stop" in Russian. Like it is. So if you're traveling,
amazing.
you hold it up to a menu, and it's like you can read a Spanish menu in English on your. It's just. That's cool. I think augmented reality is really risky, and to develop an app that's really good takes a lot of time and resources. And because it's so high risk, I don't think developers are really doing much with it right now.
Do you know what hardware modification would make augmented reality work for me? and we've talked about this a long time ago, a rotating camera. Because back in the day in dumb phones, Samsung was putting its rotating barrel cameras on a lot of its phones, and it was handy because you could move the lens around without moving the phone. If I could rotate my camera on my smartphone so that the lens was pointing straight through the top edge, and I could hold the thing like I normally hold it while using augmented reality, that would be worthwhile to me. No one will ever do it because augmented reality is something that people think is cool for like 2 seconds and then they never use it again. I feel like, citation needed. But, I don't think hardware manufacturers will bring back these movable cameras, but that would be really, really cool to see, I think.
That would be cool. And that's, another problem with augmented reality is as you implied, the unnaturalness of it. That's why I think Google Goggles is trying to do augmented reality in an entirely different way that makes sense, that's more natural.
Yes. Oh yeah, and that's going to be fun to try out. I forgot that existed. They went dark for a bit.
Yeah.
Let's. I want to stay on the Nokia apps vibe, but I want to jump into iOS because Nokia Here Maps kind of debuted, I think, last week, and it's already the 4th top iPhone app.
No, actually yesterday.
It debuted yesterday?
24 hours ago.
Oh
so
my God,
probably right now 26 hours ago. So.
And here's what happened. Everyone downloaded it as quickly as freaking possible, and everyone uninstalled it a few minutes later after they saw that it's not even it's a low resolution app. It's not made for Retina display. It's
really?
Blurry. It's really bad.
So let me just say this, because I think we had some commenters on our last episode of the one before asking, like, have you guys actually used Apple Maps? I'm like, is it really that bad, or are you just succumbing to the media hype? And it's like, guys, I can't go anywhere without people. Like, people find out what I do. They're like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm like, blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh, I have an iPhone. I'm like, of course you do. Everybody has an iPhone. And it's like, do you like it? Good, blah, 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 blah. Oh, you love it. I used to like it so much, and now I hate it. And I'm like, why is that? And they're like, maps. I'm like, of course. Like, this happens.
Like you use them nonstop.
And people apparently do. Like, I mean, just last night I was having a conversation with my friend's girlfriend. That was pretty much verbatim the conversation. And she's like, I don't even use maps anymore. I just hate it so much. I'm like, are you freaking for real? So anyway, I understand why Nokia Here Maps has risen to the top downloaded app slot so much. But you guys have used it. I have not. Tell me about it besides it's being low res. Is it any good?
It's the interface is ugly. It's very Nokia-esque, which is not so bad. It reminds me of a Symbian UI where the buttons have rounded edges and it's kind of like light blue. I tried searching for some stuff and it didn't really find what I wanted. And I think that's actually the main problem with Apple Maps. Like, I searched for, I was getting my flu shot and I needed to know the address of my primary doctor. So I type his name into Google and it takes me to like Poland. And if I did that in Google Maps on an Android phone or on an iPhone 4S with Google Maps, it would take me right to the right place. It would know that I don't care about a doctor in Poland because I'm in southeastern Pennsylvania. And I think Nokia Maps also had that problem, but it's just ugly to look at. I mean, you don't want the Apple Maps look really nice in comparison.
Yeah, tell me what's your experience over there?
Well, I can tell you this much: it is better than Apple's Maps in my city. Apple Maps in my city doesn't have any point of interest. No venues, no businesses, nothing. I have the maps all right. I can navigate from point A to point B if I manually select them. But if I search for something, anything, I cannot find it. Now, Nokia Maps has points of interest. Not all of them less than Google Maps, but it has them. So, for instance, if I am to type, there's a shopping center here in Oradea, which is called Lotus Center. If I type Lotus Center into Apple Maps, it brings me to the center of Lotus City, somewhere in the States. If I do the same thing on Here Maps, it finds it and I can navigate there. So it is definitely better. And can I speculate for just a second? Because this gives me the opportunity to further emphasize my opinion that Apple will not allow Google Maps in the App Store. And I will probably eat my words, but I think that this is the case.
So you don't think
Look at this.
Really?
We have Here Maps, 24 hours on the iTunes Store, already at position number 4. If Google Maps was accepted in the iTunes store, it will be probably number 1, higher ranked than YouTube, which is position number 2. Once everybody will start using Google's own dedicated iOS application for maps and navigation, Apple will have mission impossible bringing those users back to its own Apple Maps. And Apple canceled Google Maps for a reason. They want to push their own maps. So I think this is the reason why they will never allow Google Maps in the App Store. But I will eat my words if I'm wrong.
They screwed up. They really, really screwed this up. There's no way to get around this. They cannot reject Google Maps. It will look terrible. And if they accept Google Maps, they're going to probably screw up years and years and years worth of efforts to make their own mapping system. It's really a terrible position to be in.
It is. It is very rock and a hard place kind of thing. I wouldn't want to make that decision, but I'll tell you, if I were there, I would probably find ways to justify it. I would probably try and find ways to compromise, but I would absolutely let Google back in the store because when you, as you guys have already said, when you look at these effects, when you see Nokia release a mapping solution and then less than 24 hours later, it's like one of the top most downloaded apps in the, there's obviously a huge demand for a proper mapping solution. And it's interesting.
I also have a solution.
Oh, what is it?
So I haven't encountered a problem with the maps themselves. They are accurate. The street names in my region, at least, which is not a top region, are accurate. The problem is with the points of interest and venues. So if Apple partnered beyond Waze, because Waze, from what I've heard and seen, is their primary partner for maps, if they would partner with, I don't know, Foursquare or Facebook for locations, then automatically you'd get access to billions and billions of points of interest on your own maps and problem solved.
That's not a bad idea at all.
Because when I want to check into Foursquare, it uses Apple's maps, but it overlays the Foursquare points of interest. And that's the biggest problem of Apple's maps, the lack or the inaccuracy of the points of interest.
You know what's interesting, and this is as it relates to Windows Phone, this whole Apple Maps thing, because that's my biggest problem with Windows Phone 8, because it gets the point of interest wrong, or the Nokia Maps on Windows Phone 8 is that it gets point of interest wrong, and it's not terribly dense, and it doesn't offer a lot. But it sounds like a lot of these problems are happening on the Apple Maps, in the Apple Maps space as well. So. And this won't be a massive groundswell of movement over to Windows Phone, but I feel like there's one less impediment now for users who are like, wow, I'd really like to jump to Windows Phone from iOS, whoever these users are. I don't know if there are a lot of them.
Probably to Android, but not to Windows Phone.
Well, but now there's one less reason not to go to Windows Phone. It's like, well, my mapping experience is going to suck unless I'm on Android. Is that the state of the world right now? I mean, because really, it's what it sounds like. And it's amazing how important maps has become to the smartphone experience. I feel like it's something we treated as kind of a utility before, where we didn't really appreciate it, and now that the huge major Apple platform has screwed up maps, everyone's taking notice and saying, "Wow, I really do use that pretty often."
There's some people that still don't use that off. Like my mother got an iPhone not too long ago, and she was looking for like a nail salon, and she needed the phone number, so she's calling 311. I'm like, Mom, what the heck are you doing? You have maps on your, just type it in there. So I think there's still a lot of people, especially the less sophisticated users, that don't know the utility of the map. But I agree, it's less of a sort of secondary feature. It's more like a must-have.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I always kind of laugh when I see things like that. One of my roommates is absolutely just not a techno person, and like she was calling to order something yesterday, and she was like calling a delivery company on the phone and like reading their menu off a piece of paper. And I was like, "What are you doing? Wait a minute, what's going on with you?" She's like, "I've been looking at a computer screen all day, and I need to talk to a human and give somebody cash and get something in the real world." And I'm like, "Wow, that's weird. I don't really ever want to do that."
I can understand her.
No, I can understand her too. I'm just being a jerk, but anyway, this is while we're talking about iOS, and just to kind of close out iOS, this is fascinating, and I was going to skip it. I was not going to include it in the rundown. And I didn't put the headline in here, right? But this is a story from Stephen Schenk from yesterday. Chances are your kid wants an iPad this holiday season, but maybe not an iPad mini. And this is a Nielsen report talking about, a survey about, what do kids want for Christmas, and Apple's iPad is apparently up there on the list. And I'm reading this story. I'm kind of like, okay, who cares? Moving on to the next one. But then I look at the bottom, the last line of this story, that's talking about how kids want the iPod Touch, the iPad, and the iPhone 5. As we move away from Apple territory, says the story, kids seem to quickly lose interest. Only about 1/6 of the children surveyed claimed to be jonesing for an Android phone, and a meager 6% are hoping to see a Microsoft Surface in their stockings. That's fascinating because
I mean, what is a kid gonna be like? Daddy, I wanna make a spreadsheet. Really, I wanna have the best. I wanna have macros.
PowerPoint presentation.
I wanna make a PowerPoint for my preschool teacher
Paint right now. But this is the thing, right? Because if I'm looking at this story, my initial impulse is to be like, kids don't care about reading about kids, whatever. But kids are the buyers of tomorrow, and what their preferences say is really, really important. And I feel like Apple's brand image may be not eroding, but maybe in the position where it could be eroding soon, in the face of this kind of Android onslaught or whatever. But that hasn't trickled down to kids yet at all, because I feel like 6% of kids want a Microsoft Surface. Like only 1/6 of children surveyed wanted an Android phone. And I don't know what the testing methodology was, but this is Nielsen. This isn't some like tiny analyst firm. This is real data that's really interesting, and it says a lot about the future, I think. Go ahead.
I don't know if we're talking about teens, preteens, toddlers, or
6 to 12.
So this is a little bit unrelated, but sort of related. Recently, there was an 8-month-old boy in my house. He was a friend's son, and they had this awesome case for their iPad. It was a Fisher-Price iPad case that just surrounded the device in like tons of plastic and rubber. So if you dropped it from the Empire State Building, it would just bounce away happily. And to quiet this kid, the mother gives him the iPad. And here's a kid who can't sit up by himself because he's too young. He obviously can't talk. Mm-hmm. And she puts on an app for him that's like a storybook app that says stuff. There's like sounds and colors. And this 8-month-old kid who has terrible motor control, just because he's so young, is able to swipe on the darn screen. And he sits there for like 35 minutes swiping from screen to screen on this iPad, completely immersed. And it was just, wow. It's crazy.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's amazing. And yeah, I mean, kids' affinity towards these Apple products is probably going to carry them forward. And, we're having Thanksgiving at our house, and there's going to be a 9-year-old boy, and he's a little crazy. That's a tough age. They're bouncing off the walls. I bring out my iPad, and I'm like, here's my games folder, and he runs away, and I don't see him the rest of the night. It's amazing.
I'm kind of looking at the bar graph from this survey, and there are some. Excuse me, there's some hope for other stuff in here. There's a category called tablet computer other than iPad, which got a respectable 29% to the iPad's 48%. So that's interesting. And that mirrors this other kind of metric where we frequently forget how big the non-iPad tablet market is, or at least I do. And I keep forgetting, like, the iPad is not the leader as far as share goes in the tablet space. Right? What?
It is.
For sales, it may be, but not for actual market saturation. Like
it is.
We have to find.
It just recently fell from 65% to 50-something percent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe you're right. It is over 50%. It is the leader, but I think from my perspective, I expected its lead to be somewhere between 80 to 90%, and not the slim lead that it has. Right. And it's fun to think about. And all this, and these metrics were true, back in the days before the Nexus 7 and when the Kindle Fire hadn't gotten that much purchase yet. This was true, way, way earlier this year, later last year. And I'm like, who's buying all these like Zooms? So it's interesting to be reminded sometimes that the tablet market itself is bigger than we think it is.
No, we will see exactly what we have seen with the iPhone. I mean, the iPhone is one phone coming from one manufacturer with one operating system against everybody else. The iPad is exactly the same. It's one tablet from one company with one OS versus everybody else. What I find amazing is that 2 or 3 years almost after its introduction, the iPad is still the market leader.
Yeah, that is fascinating, and it's, I think we write about the reasons why and like ecosystem concerns and stuff like that, and it'll be interesting to see what the Nexus 10 does to this, if anything. It'll be interesting to see if Google's gamble works, where they're like, we made beautiful hardware, now developers get excited, Oh, speaking of which, just very briefly, Tony sent me a link right before the podcast started. The Skype app has been rewritten for Android, and apparently it takes advantage of larger screen sizes a little bit better. I think Skype stories kind of bore me more than anything else because Skype always fails me somehow, except in this podcast, which, by the way, knock on wood, Skype has been doing us well for about 20 episodes here. But, it's interesting to me to see that an application from a developer owned by a competitor, which is Microsoft, is finally like taking advantage of the larger canvas size of a bigger Android tablet. And these apps, and these apps are out there, as Android commenters remind us all the time. It's like, here's this list of awesome tablet apps. Like, we wrote that article months ago. Yeah, exactly. And so they are out there. But to see that to come from a big developer like Skype is cool. So maybe it's starting to work already. We don't know. We won't know until the Nexus 10 really gets out there, and hopefully it'll sell in some numbers. And
by the way, real quick, let us know what you think about the Nexus 10, because I've seen you unboxed it.
Oh, yes. It's beautiful in a weird kind of
a flying saucer-ish way.
in a late 90s concept of the future kind of way. It's, I like those rounded edges, and I like the feel in hand because it has this, it's soft touch, but you know how soft touch is almost like suede to the fingertips sometimes? Like it has that strange, soft touch has a very unique feel. Samsung has gone with some completely different soft touch on this thing, and it's tacky almost.
Is it tacky and like a gross, I just spilled my applesauce on this?
My soda on this? No, it's not. It manages to be tacky and grippy in a way that's not gross. Now, I didn't get all sweaty with it. If it's the summertime, I'm walking around with this thing and like it's hot. It's probably gross, right? But I don't know. I just like different materials choices. And when you marry different materials choices with a kind of an unconventional design, that, yes, does look like a toddler's tablet, maybe a little bit with its weirdo rounded corners. I'm going to like it because it's different. And the screen is, beautiful, what I saw of the startup screen. I didn't want to ruin Joe Levi's experience too much. I was like, all right, I've unboxed it. Let me get this out to our Android guy. And
I wonder how much of that outer aspect, the design, has something to do with Samsung and Google believing it, or just being a move to avoid future possible litigation from Apple.
That's a good question, and I'm sure that probably played a big part in the design. And I'm glad about it because, frankly, I'm tired of big rectangular slabs with short radius circles and on the corners, and like, oh wow, cool, it's another. It could be an iPad. It could be something. I don't know. I'm 6 feet away. I can't tell what it is, because they all look the same. So yeah, I'm happy to see that. We'll have to see what Joe thinks of it. We're not going to go for listener mail today because, as I mentioned, this is a short podcast. We still have stuff to do before the holiday comes in. So, folks, when you send us listener mail, thank you for your mail. We'll try and get to some of these pieces next week. Please do favor brevity if possible. We love reading your mail, but some of these, I think most of the pieces we got this week are like really, really long. So we just don't have time by the time we get to the end of one of these shows. And as I learned, or tried to learn as a teenager, simply saying "I'll keep this short" at the top of your piece of mail, and then following it with 700 words of expression doesn't work. But I want to reiterate that we actually love getting mail from you, and some of these questions are really good.
Well, Michael, we keep on saying the same thing for the length of the podcast too.
Oh, that's true. What, that we're going to go shorter? That's right. We open up every show. It's like, we're going to keep this one short.
We're at 90 minutes again. I think if we want to keep it below 1 hour, we have to talk about only one topic.
I know. Well, you know what? Well, we'll talk about this. I want to kind of maybe think about doing a show. Anyway, whatever. We'll talk off the air. Listeners, you will have to speculate about what we're going to talk about. But before we sign off, can I get some final thoughts from? We've talked about some important stuff today. Brandon, before the holiday ushers us into wonderful tryptophan-based sleep, do you want to say anything?
I don't think so.
Good for you. You said it all.
I think I unleashed a big beating on the Nexus 4 to start, and I'll hash out some more thoughts in the final review coming early next week. But it's still a good phone. Just again, keep your expectations in check. That's my final thought. That's
a good point. And Tony?
I am looking forward to seeing all the reports, press releases, and analysis following up Black Friday and Cyber Monday in terms of sales. We've sold this much, we've activated this much, and just to compare them. And this is just to remember our audience, readers, listeners, that it's kicking off the holiday season. It's going to be analysis and reports after analysis and reports. Last year was that huge battle between Google's Android and Apple's iOS. Like, how many millions did we activate over the Christmas period? No, we did 25 pieces more. So I'm just looking forward to seeing those and reporting of course.
Me too. And yeah, you actually remind me that we will have tags live for Black Friday stories and Cyber Monday stories, and you'll want to watch for those, listeners. If you're out there in line on Black Friday at like midnight to get into Best Buy to go buy something, or whatever, if you have a technology-related story about Black Friday or Cyber Monday, shoot us an email, because we'll probably be talking about it next week on the podcast. We'd like to hear your stories. But in the interim, we have a lot of work to do, and then we have a lot of turkey to eat over here. And poor Tony's got a lot of work to do in our absence. Sorry, man.
And salivating to your turkey.
Yes. I'll save some for you. In the interim, though, that wraps it up for episode 19 of the Pocketnow Weekly. Throw a tweet our way. We will be tweeting, or I will be tweeting all the time, and most of us are pretty active on the Twitter sphere. Tony is at Anton D. Nagy, ANTONDNAGY. Brandon is at Brandon Miniman, and I am at Captain 2 Phones. It's Captain, the number 2 Phones. Follow Pocketnow's official Twitter account at Pocketnow Tweets. You can follow us on Facebook and Google+. Leave us a review on iTunes or Zune if you like the podcast. And if you have a topic, question, or suggestion for the podcast, a Black Friday story, a story about Thanksgiving, or you just want to say hi, email us, podcast@pocketnow.com. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you again next week.
Happy Thanksgiving.